I never expected to wake up in a world that smelled like tension, pheromones, and hopeless longing. The first thing I noticed wasn't the sun or the room, it was the thrum in my chest, the system's cold voice echoing in my mind. Acquire the Omega's heart to survive. Heart. Mine had never felt so hollow, or so eager. The street outside my new apartment smelled faintly of rain and gasoline, the neon signs buzzing over a diner across the road. I blinked at my reflection in the mirror. Young, strong, alpha, but not me. This body didn't belong to me, yet it felt like it had been waiting. Waiting for something or someone. I had two choices. Obey the system or collapse into nothing. Obeying meant finding him, the Omega who the system insisted I claim. His name was Elliot, and from the moment I saw him, huddled under the awning of a closed bookstore, shivering with a thin coat, the words "miserable Omega" didn't do him justice. He was everything fragile and beautiful, his scent clinging to the wet air, pulling at something in my chest I hadn't known I was capable of feeling. I made the mistake of staring too long. He noticed. Those wide, cautious eyes locked on mine, suspicion and fear warring in their depths. I wanted to reach out, to assure him, to steal his breath for myself, but I remembered the system. I was supposed to win him, not scare him off. "Hey," I said, voice rougher than I intended, betraying the alpha underneath the stranger. He flinched but didn't run. Small victories counted in this world. "You okay under there?" I'm fine," he said, voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. But the lie was obvious. His fingers dug into the straps of his bag like he wanted something to hold on to. I knew that desperation all too well. I had been there before, only in my other life it had been invisible, lonely, endless. The rain started falling heavier, dripping down the brim of his hood. Without thinking, I stepped closer and tilted it back, letting him see my face. I wanted him to trust me, maybe even like me. "You don't have to stand there alone," I murmured, not daring to touch him, though my body ached to bridge the space between us. For a moment, his eyes softened. It was just a flicker, but it was enough. My system buzzed angrily in my mind, scolding, reminding me to take action. I ignored it. Elliot was not a puzzle to be solved, it was someone breathing, trembling, alive. I spent the next few days trailing him through the city, careful not to intrude, letting the system's cruel countdown gnaw at me. Each encounter was electric. A glance in the library, a shared bench in the park, a brush of hands over spilled coffee in a corner cafe. Every time, his scent wrapped around me like smoke, his soft, hesitant movements igniting instincts I couldn't suppress. Elliot's life was a series of muted grays. His apartment smelled faintly of lavender and old books, but it was empty, stark, like he hadn't claimed it as his own. He worked at a small bakery downtown, frosting cupcakes with trembling hands, offering polite smiles to customers that didn't reach his eyes. Every night, he returned to that tiny apartment, eating alone, whispering his fears to the walls. One night, the rain caught me off guard. I had just left a diner and saw him standing under the same awning as before, soaked, shivering. My alpha instincts screamed at me to approach, to shield, to claim, but my heart whispered a softer truth. I didn't want to claim him. I wanted to be near him, to see him smile without fear. "Elliot," I said, voice low, carrying over the rain. He looked up, startled. And then something broke in his expression. Fear, resignation, and maybe hope. "Go away," he whispered, his voice cracking. I can't." I ignored the system's incessant nudges. I stepped closer, close enough that our shoulders brushed, sending shivers down both our spines. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "Not tonight. Not ever." He swallowed, eyes darting around, as if looking for escape. But I had no intention of letting him go. I reached out, just to tuck a wet strand of hair behind his ear. My fingers lingered against his cheek longer than necessary. His breath hitched. "I can't," he started, voice barely audible. Then, after a pause, "I don't know what I want." "Neither do I," I admitted, truth ripping from my chest. "But I know I want to be here, with you." even if it scares us both. Something in him shifted then, a subtle surrender. Not complete, but enough to make the pulse in my chest feel like it could shatter. We stayed like that for minutes, rain falling around us, breathing the same wet, cold air, until finally he leaned just a fraction closer, testing the boundaries. And I alpha, system-driven, heart reborn met him halfway. The first touch wasn't perfect. His hand trembled against mine, my fingers brushing his knuckles. But it was real, solid, alive. And in that heartbeat, I knew this was the beginning of everything we both had been missing. Over the next week, our interactions deepened. A shared coffee in the early morning, walking side by side through crowded streets, Elliot laughing softly at my terrible attempts to navigate subway lines. Each smile, each hesitant touch, each moment of vulnerability drew us closer, against the system's cold, calculating rules. One evening, the bakery was quiet. I had promised to help him close up, something small, harmless. I watched him carefully, memorizing every slight gesture, the tilt of his head, the curve of his lips, the way he sighed when he thought no one was looking. I wanted to hold him, to claim him in the most human sense, not the system's cruel way. "Do you ever feel trapped?" I asked, voice low, almost a whisper. He glanced at me, surprised. "All the time," he admitted, brushing flour off his hands. "But I don't know how to get out." I stepped closer, closing the distance the system wanted me to exploit. My hand brushed his shoulder. His body tensed, then relaxed slightly as he leaned into the touch, fragile, tentative, seeking comfort. "Maybe we can figure it out together," I said, and for the first time I sensed a spark of trust. The system buzzed, frustrated, warning me that my time to win him was limited. But I ignored it. Elliot wasn't a task to be completed. He was a person. An ire-born, system-bound, yet fiercely alive knew I would rather defy the rules than lose what was becoming ours. Our nights became a secret dance of closeness. A hand brushed the other in passing. A lingering glance across a crowded street. Soft words whispered under neon lights. Each moment charged with electricity, danger, and an impossible tenderness. I learned his fears, his small joys, the way he tucked himself into oversized sweaters to hide, the way his laugh came out unexpectedly loud when he was genuinely happy. And in return, I shared fragments of myself, carefully, cautiously, revealing a soul that had been lost once and refused to disappear again. Then came the night that changed everything. Rain pounding the windows of his apartment, thunder rumbling like the system itself was angry. Elliot shivered on the couch, blanket pulled tight. I sat beside him, shoulders touching, a safe distance yet impossibly close. "You're here," he said, voice barely audible over the storm. Even when it's hard." "I'll always be here," I said. My fingers brushed his hair, tucking it behind his ear. His skin was warm, fragile beneath my touch. He leaned into me slightly, not fully, not yet but enough. And in that fragile, electric space, I realized this was no longer about a system, about a forced task. This was about trust, about love, about two souls, broken and searching, finding each other in the storm. We didn't kiss that night, not yet, but we held the space between us, fragile, alive, trembling with the promise of more. And for the first time since waking in this strange world, I felt free. The days that followed felt like walking on a knife's edge, delicate yet intoxicating. Every small touch, glance, or brush of fingers carried weight in a world where instincts ran wild, where pheromones could betray the deepest desires before a word was spoken. Elliot and I moved carefully, learning each other's boundaries, exploring the unspoken tension that had been growing since that first rainy night. One morning, the city was quiet, almost eerily so, and I found myself waiting outside the bakery before it opened. He arrived, hood up, hands shoved in his pockets, yet the moment he saw me, his face softened in a way that made my chest ache. He was beautiful, frightened, fragile, yet undeniably alive. The alpha in me wanted to claim him fully, but the human part of me wanted nothing more than to hold him gently, without forcing the world on him. "Good morning," I said, my voice low, hesitant. Rain had left the air crisp, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and his familiar pheromones. "Morning," he replied, eyes flicking away. A blush dusted his cheeks, subtle but unmistakable. "You're early. I wanted to see you before work," I admitted, shrugging as if it were casual. My heart hammered, betraying the calm I tried to project. Elliot looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slightly, as though permitting me to exist in his morning world. That small gesture felt monumental. Inside the bakery, the warmth wrapped around us like a cocoon. Flour dusted the countertops, and the smell of fresh bread and sugar mingled with the scent of him. I watched him move, careful and deliberate, and for the first time, I realized how much of him was hiding in plain sight, how careful he had been for years, protecting himself, keeping others at arm's length. I don't usually let anyone see this side," he said quietly as he wiped his hands. I smiled softly. "Then I'm honored you're letting me in." It was the first time we really talked about him, about his fears, the weight he carried alone. The world had been harsh to him, indifferent, and now, in this strange twist of fate, I was the one who could be the constant he never asked for but desperately needed. The weeks passed in a delicate rhythm. We fell into a pattern of cautious intimacy. Morning coffees, evening walks, stolen touches in quiet moments. Every accidental brush of hands, every shared laugh, built a connection that the system could never quantify. It was ours, messy, tentative, and achingly human. Then came the night that would forever mark the turning point. A full moon hung low over the city, casting silvery light over rain-slick streets. Elliot's apartment smelled faintly of vanilla and clean laundry, a contrast to the storm brewing outside. He had been tense all evening, fidgeting with his hands, avoiding my gaze. "What's wrong?" I asked, voice soft, pulling a chair closer to him on the couch. He shook his head, swallowing hard. "It's nothing. I don't want to. I don't want to mess things up with you." "You won't?" I assured him, brushing a damp strand of hair from his forehead. His skin was warm under my fingers, his pulse racing. "I'm not going anywhere. Not now. Not ever." Elliot's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Slowly, he leaned toward me, tentative, searching, until our foreheads touched. His scent enveloped me, his pheromones calling to the alpha within me, igniting something primal yet tender. I wrapped an arm around his waist, drawing him closer without breaking the fragile trust he was offering. I don't know if I can do this," he whispered. "You can," I said, heart thundering, "because you don't have to do it alone." And then, finally, his lips brushed Minea Featherlight, almost hesitant contact, testing the waters of this new reality we were building together. It was electric, tender, and unbearably intimate. The world outside faded, leaving only the two of us, trembling in the fragile cocoon of a shared moment. As days turned into nights, our intimacy deepened. Hands wandered cautiously, hearts beat in synchrony, and every accidental touch became a declaration. Elliot's fears slowly melted under the warmth of my presence, and I learned that dominance was not always about control. It was about protection, care, and patience. One evening, the system buzzed angrily, a reminder of its cruel agenda. But I ignored it. Elliot was no longer a task, a mission. It was him, the boy who had unknowingly claimed my heart before I even understood it myself. We lay together under the soft glow of his apartment lamp, limbs entwined, breaths mingling. His head rested on my chest, hair damp from the evening rain we had shared walking back from a nearby park. "You're my safe place," he murmured, eyes closed. "And you're mine," I replied, pressing a gentle kiss to his temple. The simplicity of the words, the honesty, felt like a revolution in a world that demanded struggle and conquest. The first kiss that had been tentative grew into deeper, more fervent exchanges. Our bodies learned each other's language, every touch a conversation, every sigh a confession. Yet even in passion, tenderness prevailed. No rush, no force, just the careful, intoxicating process of two souls finally finding their mirror in one another. Elliot began to trust more openly. He let me see the bruises of past heartbreaks, the walls he had built, and gradually, we dismantled them together. I became not just his alpha, but his confidant, his anchor, his partner in this strange, beautiful chaos we called life. There were moments of doubt, moments when fear tried to pull him back into isolation. I held him through them, whispered reassurances, and let him know that closeness did not equal danger. With each trial, our bond strengthened, and the impossible warmth of love began to bloom between us. One rainy afternoon, as the city streets glistened under a melancholy sun, Elliot finally said the words that had lingered unspoken for months. "I love you." I froze, heart hammering, then pulled him close, feeling the tremor of sincerity in his voice. "I love you too," I whispered, lips brushing against his temple. "More than I ever thought I could." The system, silent now, seemed irrelevant. We were not tasks, not objectives. We were each other. And that was enough. Our lives gradually blended into one another, shared meals, quiet mornings, whispered secrets, gentle arguments followed by tender reconciliations. The city no longer felt vast and intimidating. It was intimate, filled with the traces of our laughter, our love, our shared history. On nights when the rain fell, we would sit by the window, fingers intertwined, watching the world wash itself clean, knowing we had done the same for each other in ways words could never capture. Elliot would laugh softly when I teased him about trivial things. I would hold him when shadows of the past crept back into his mind. Every day, our connection deepened, evolving from desperate survival into a love that was fierce, tender, and enduring. The culmination of our journey came quietly, not with grand declarations, but in a simple, profound moment. I had cooked dinner, a rare attempt that left flour on my sleeves and laughter in the air. Elliot leaned against me, smelling faintly of rain and something uniquely him. "You know," he said softly, "I never believed happiness like this was possible." I pulled him into my arms, feeling the warmth of his body against mine. "It's possible," I said, "because we made it possible. Together." And in the glow of that ordinary, extraordinary evening, I understood something fundamental about this world, about love, about us. It wasn't about the system, the titles, the roles imposed upon us. It was about trust, vulnerability, and the courage to reach for another soul, even when it scared you. Elliot lifted his head, eyes shimmering with tears, and kissed Menet tentative, not testing but fully, completely, as if sealing a promise written in every heartbeat, every breath, every shared night. We fell into the couch together, limbs entwined, laughter mixing with whispered affirmations, until sleep claimed us both, safe in the knowledge that the world outside might rage, but within these walls, we had found home. Years later, when people asked how we had survived the chaos of our world, I would smile, brushing a hand through Elliot's hair, and answer simply, "We trusted each other." And that was more than enough. The system never returned, or perhaps it did, but we no longer cared. Our love had outgrown the need for rules, triumphs, or conquests. It was quiet, steadfast, and beautifully human. Elliot's laugh still echoed in the apartment. I still held him close on stormy nights, and the city outside, once daunting and alien, had become our canvas, a place where two souls, lost and uncertain, had painted a life full of warmth, passion, and the quiet glory of being together. We were not defined by titles or fates. We were defined by each other. And that, more than anything, was the victory worth having. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.